Welcome to Alchemical Science. I'm Jordan, an open source researcher who for the last year or so has been investigating the technology and works of Malcolm Bendall, including his Thunderstorm generator, which we've been covering quite heavily on the channel. Alright, so those who are still struggling to understand what Malcolm Bendall's Thunderstorm generator is and what it does, this video is for you. Back to basics, my friends. I also received a couple more short videos of the Thunderstorm generator testing, this time in the US, that I've got to share to continue on from the updates from my last video. And the first of the Thunderstorm generator units, which will be available at Cosmic Summit in June, was delivered to the US ahead of time and retrofit to an engine this week. And I believe there'll be more independent testing performed on this unit in the US before the conference over the next couple months too. So I'll be sure to keep you all updated if I hear anything further on this. Remember, you can book your ticket for Cosmic Summit now to either come in person or be there for the virtual live stream. The link is there in the description. But first, I get a lot of feedback from people who are genuinely interested in understanding the Thunderstorm generator, saying that my videos aren't really very friendly to beginners. And that's fair. I guess they're not really. This isn't an easy science to explain to a diverse audience, but we will get there, and I'll keep trying to make it easier to understand. So if you're still scratching your head, listen on carefully to this next part, and we'll go through the basics and answer some frequently asked questions. If you believe you've already got your mind around the basics and you're just here for the new updates, feel free to skip near to the end of the video where you'll find the new trial footage and a brief explanation of the results. But for everyone else, what is the Thunderstorm generator? Bear with me here, there are a couple parts to it, but it's actually very simple to understand once we get through the basics. The Thunderstorm generator, invented by Australian inventor and geochemist Malcolm Bendall, is a waste energy conversion system designed to be retrofitted to any existing internal combustion engine. That is, an engine that runs on some kind of carbon-based fuel, so petrol, diesel, natural gas, coal, wood, whatever else you can really think of that fits this criteria. When the Thunderstorm generator is retrofitted to the engine or other carbon emission source, it converts the exhaust waste stream, generally consisting of carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide, hydrocarbons, other elements, into oxygen, nitrogen, hydrogen, and other more useful elements in this context. So this has two sides. First, it's a method to utilize 100% of the fuel that we put in our engines for some useful purpose. The biggest design flaw of the modern internal combustion engine is that it doesn't actually utilize all of the fuel that we put in it. It spits half of it back out, or even more, as a so-called waste product. This is, I must say, a seriously overlooked and obvious design flaw when we take the time to actually consider it. What does an engine emit as waste? Heat and carbon. What are some of the best things we can use to store energy and cause a reaction? Heat and carbon. We just need to do something with them first, create another reaction or two using geometry and resonance, rather than just feeding heat and carbon directly back into an engine and expecting it to do something. And this is exactly what the Thunderstorm generator is designed to do. Strike Foundation's in-house trials have shown that the retrofit can produce a 15 to 40% increase in fuel efficiency under load, and we'll see independent replication of these tests over the coming months now that these have begun, and I'll be sure to share any new trials here on the channel as I see them published. The other side of this that I mentioned, and a large part of the focus of the research so far, many people still new to this will be scratching their heads and thinking, wait, did he say carbon is being transmuted into oxygen? Yeah, incredible, I know. I've almost become a little desensitized to it, but it is indeed doing this. Numerous independent scientists and investigators have witnessed confirmation of this in person. Public demonstrations with testing and analysis equipment have been done. I've taken a good half on the exhaust myself for the sake of science, and ball lightning expert Bob Grenier once even sat in a room with one running next to him for about 8 hours without his carbon monoxide sensor going off or feeling unwell in any way. Carbon gases are going in, oxygen is coming out, essentially. If you don't care about how it works, that's all you really need to know, but we will of course be going a bit deeper than that. To deal with another fundamental question first though, probably the most common question I get is, does it need fossil fuel to run? Yes and no. The Thunderstorm generator is literally intended to synthesize a controlled thunderstorm in the final unit of the, or module of the system. So this means that there needs to be two opposing vortexes, one hot and expanding with counterclockwise spin, and one cold and contracting with clockwise spin. This is how a natural thunderstorm is formed, and this is how a thunderstorm is generated in the system. So the conditions to form a cold clockwise vortex are supplied by the retrofit itself, but the conditions for the hot counterclockwise vortex must be supplied by the engine or another carbon emission source that the system is retrofit to. So it doesn't matter what this is. It could be a standard combustion engine or literally any other hot carbon gas stream. It must be just over a certain threshold of temperature, depending on the retrofit itself. And there just must be some carbon, a minimum of 10% according to previous observations and studies on similar systems. So do you need fossil fuel to run it? No, there are plenty of ways you could do it, theoretically, and in practice. Is fossil fuel being used to run the engines fit with the standard prototypes that we're talking about here? Yes, absolutely. Sometimes the fuel tank's moved out of the way of the exhaust, but it's definitely been present and utilized in all of the publicly demonstrated systems and footage so far. That's its intended purpose. With that out of the way, how does the thunderstorm generator actually work? Let's go through the modules and phases of the system step by step. And again, I'll avoid using any complex terminology where it's not required, and everybody should be able to follow on. The thunderstorm generator consists of three main units or modules. The UV air ionization unit is the first stage of the system. The plasmoid generator, often referred to as the bubbler, is the second stage of the system. And the thunderstorm generator unit itself, or the Vajra, named after the thunderbolt weapon of Lord Indra, is the third and final unit of the retrofit. The three units are plumbed together in a chain, and the Vajra, the final unit of the retrofit, is fitted to both the exhaust and the air intake of a combustion engine. You can see my DIY build guide video for a full description for how this is achieved if you wish to know more on this. Now that we know the three main units that the thunderstorm generator is comprised of, let's simulate what occurs in the system when the engine is turned on with the retrofit installed, step by step. So the engine is turned on and warmed up for a short period of time with the retrofit turned off. In other words, a valve is used to isolate the engine from the retrofit while the engine warms up to a standard operating temperature. And at this point, the valve is opened, forcing the engine to now begin to vacuum its air instead through the thunderstorm generator itself. The retrofit is hermetically sealed from beginning to end to maintain vacuum. So now on each vacuum cycle of the engine's pistons, air is pulled through the entire thunderstorm generator retrofit and into the air intake of the engine. In this first stage of the system, the air is ionized by a UV glow within the chamber. And I won't go into details about this. You can check out my other videos if you're interested in the specifics. But essentially by exposing the air to a certain frequency of UV light as it enters the system, we can set up more favorable conditions for the magic that occurs in the second stage of the system, the plasmoid generator unit, or the bubbler. So air is pulled through this initial ionization chamber and through into the bottom of the bubbler chamber, the second unit of the system. It's vacuumed through into this second water-filled chamber via a porous air stone, which disperses the air as bubbles in the water. The bubbles are further micronized and dispersed when they're forced to pass through a barrier of stainless steel wool, stuffed down into the water of the chamber. This is important. Malcolm Bendall, the inventor, says that we're looking to generate small bubbles here, which are much more likely to implode symmetrically. Bob Greenyer, an independent expert on water bubble cavitation, adds that in any cavitation system, and I'll explain what that means in a moment if you don't know, we want to encourage large parameter sweeping. In other words, we want to produce bubbles of many different sizes, increasing the likelihood that some of the bubbles will be in exactly the parameters for viable cavitation. Okay, so what is cavitation? It's defined in physics as the formation of an empty space within a solid object or body. In this case, it's as simple as bubbles in water. We form cavities of ionized air and water gases in the liquid water medium. The bubbles are pulled out of the water into the top of the chamber, where they implode under pressure and form a different kind of cavity. Now we get to the bit that you won't find in most regular physics textbooks, although it is an evidence-based phenomena, strongly supported by various academic works. And I've included some links in the description for deeper reading if you're interested in that. If a bubble is imploded under specific conditions, in other words, their cavities are of the correct volume and geometry at the moment they are imploded, they form a homeostatic or self-contained plasma structure that is often referred to simply as ball lightning or a Shamir plasmoid. This is the process of water bubble cavitation. Now, plasma is, of course, the fourth state of matter. We have solid, liquid, gas, then plasma. And most people are already well aware of plasma. What is less well understood in mainstream physics is that there is a vast difference between plasma and structured plasma. If we implode any old bubble under pressure, what actually happens? The boundaries of the liquid shell of the bubble are forced inwards towards the central point until the structure bursts and disperses as water vapor or droplets, and the gases contained within the bubble escape and mix back in with the surrounding atmosphere. If the bubbles are within the parameters necessary for viable cavitation, they implode to form a toroidal magnetodielectric field structure, which has the ability to sustain its plasma form. This is the ball lightning, or plasmoid, the true secret of the Thunderstorm generator and of what people previously called cold fusion or low-energy nuclear reactions. And these are now becoming defunct and imprecise terms, but for a long time they were used to describe elements of the same process in other historical experiments and systems. These structures literally have a life of their own. They're not simply a chemical reaction. They are an elementary life form, the clearly defined and structured body of plasma. There's been significant research done too into larger, naturally occurring ball lightning structures and observations of them acting independently. But in this scenario, they're very small and they're contained within the hermetically sealed system and influenced by the force of the engine's vacuum and pressure to move through the system and perform a specific task as desired. So let's get to what this task is. The microscopic ball lightning, or plasmoids, are vacuumed along with the water gases and vapors through the outlet at the top of the bubbler, back down into the lower sphere of the Thunderstorm generator, or Vajra, the final unit of the system. And this is not simply two steel spheres with a pipe connecting them. It's actually 6 spheres total, 2 nested sets of 3 on each end of the apparatus. So at the opposite end, the exhaust stream from the engine is fed in a counterclockwise vortex into the cavity between the outermost 4-inch or equivalent hollow sphere and the middle 3-inch or equivalent hollow sphere at one end of the unit. The intake stream of cold water vapor and gases and plasmoids from the bubbler chamber is fed into the sphere at the other end of the Vajra in the opposing direction in a clockwise vortex, this time into the cavity between the middle 3-inch or equivalent hollow sphere and the innermost 2-inch or equivalent sphere, which is just here as a flow guide in this scenario and to prevent the system from overcharging, and I won't get into this more right now. I say 4, 3, and 2-inch or equivalent because it is the ratio that matters here. The system can be scaled to fit practically anything, so long as the 4 to 3 to 2 ratio is maintained between the spheres and pipes. To be clear, the opposing hot and cold streams do not actually collide, at least not in the usual way that we consider matter colliding. The opposing vortexes are separated by the metal partition of the middle nested spheres and pipes. So our plasmoids and water vapors are vacuumed through into the 3-inch sphere. This cold stream is guided by the 3-inch and 2-inch spheres to flow into the nested pipe in a clockwise vortex. And it's occurring under vacuum from the engine, so you already have a cooling and contracting force by default to some extent. And contraction is fundamentally synonymous with clockwise spin. We have contraction or vacuum. When breathing in, we have clockwise spin. This is of course the same in reverse. In the case of the exhaust output stream, we have expansion, release of pressure, breathing out, counterclockwise spin, the release of heat or release of energy. Although the two opposing vortexes are separated by the walls of the metal pipe, ball lightning structures are homeostatic, completely self-contained entities. It's well established that they're able to move through and interact through solid metal. So these two opposing vortexes form our thunderstorm. A thunderstorm is actually just a larger form of plasmoid or magnetodielectric field structure, but I won't get into this. You can see my video here if you would like to go any deeper into this. At the point of equilibrium between the two vortexes lies the plane of inertia, and this is what we often call the 0 point. It is the point of the thunderstorm where there's complete stillness, complete equilibrium, no time. The eye of the storm, so to speak. When we create a 0 point in this way by forming two counter-opposing vortexes, one where we are accelerating the frequency of matter, accelerating time, one where we are de-accelerating or reversing the frequency of matter, when this matter passes through this point of equilibrium where there is literally no time, much of it will be momentarily stripped of its frequency altogether. It becomes direct current energy without form or timing. The carbon from the hot exhaust stream is essentially torn apart at an atomic level as it passes through the shear of the 0 point and is deconstructed back into direct current energy without frequency. As this direct current dissociated energy passes out the other side of the 0 point, it will immediately reform back into the most convenient arrangement of isotopes as it re-enters space and time. This is primarily dependent on the surrounding conditions, the properties of the thunderstorm, the energy available. In the case of the thunderstorm generator, we find that carbon is primarily being transmuted into oxygen, a little bit of nitrogen and other elements. At least this is what all current trials, analysis on the prototypes, and also historical research strongly is suggesting, and no other viable explanation has so far been proposed either. Now, according to Malcolm, the larger thunderstorm we're generating via geometry and resonance within the Vajra only accounts for approximately 50% of the full process of fusion or transmutation occurring in the system. Our small ball lightning or plasmoid structures generated in the bubbler in the last phase of the operation are essential to the complete process. They're the true secret behind the thunderstorm generator, and the thunderstorm itself really acts as a catalyst to further amplify the fusion reactions caused by ball lightning. These tiny ball lightning structures within the cold clockwise vortex like to help equalize things. Like I say, they act like bees in a way. If the beehive is overheating, the bees automatically will take up the duty of cooling it down by sitting near the entrance and fanning hot air out of the hive with their wings. Similarly, the plasmoids or ball lightning structures here become aware that the inner nested pipe and sphere is at least several hundred degrees cooler than the outer nested pipe and sphere, and they'll act out of instinct, as nature's soldiers or servants in a way, to try and equalize these polarized forces and keep homeostasis in the system. Their plasma forms not being bound by the metal confines of the inner sphere and pipe, they'll create ionized pathways and arc between the inner and outer spheres and pipes, appearing like thin ultraviolet energy worms. These wormhole ball lightning structures act similarly to the larger thunderstorm itself, except they're much smaller. They consist of two opposing vortexes, the same thing here, the yin and the yang, forming a single unified hourglass or hyperboloidal shape. And if you've been following the work of Bob Greenyer, Ken Wheeler, Nassim Haramein, Marco Rodin, they all speak about these structures in some way or another. Again, time deaccelerates as matter, heat, and energy enter the clockwise imploding vortex, and they are disassociated from their form, ripped apart at an atomic level. Everything loses its sense of timing, the frequency of its spin or perturbation, and it becomes direct current energy, ether. It's ejected again from the plasmoid via the counterclockwise expanding vortex. Time is accelerated this time, and new elements reform. In the case of the thunderstorm generator, again, we find significantly increased levels of oxygen in the analysis of the gas composition from the final exhaust. So for a large part, to put it very simply, we are seeing the transmutation of carbon gases into oxygen. Very handy. However, this is actually only the tip of the iceberg of what is occurring and why it's part of the most important scientific discovery or rediscovery pretty much ever. There's actually a discernible stepwise process of transmutation or synthesis of new elements and isotopes occurring that doesn't just involve carbon and oxygen. We're going to stick to the basic practical elements of the thunderstorm generator in this video and not get too much into the other exciting possibilities it opens up right now. But there is actually an insane amount of research going on around this stepwise transmutation process, involving all sorts of elements other than just carbon and oxygen. We're finding traces of all sorts of organic and inorganic elements being synthesized by ball lightning reactions. Bob Greenyer, the water bubble cavitation and ball lightning expert that I spoke about earlier, and any of you who've been following the channel regularly will probably know him very well, he's been making major progress on clearly identifying this stepwise transmutation process caused by ball lightning reactions in the thunderstorm generator and other fusion reactors working on similar principles. His videos over the last month, many of them published in multiple languages and all open source, they tell us the story of the life of a Shamir plasmoid or a ball lightning structure in great detail, how they feed on matter and energy, how they synthesize a magnetic core, how they eject newly formed organic and inorganic elements as a waste product. And this is an incredible oversimplification of what Bob Greenyer's recent findings actually fully show. But if you want to go deeper on this, you can go and check out all of this at length on the Martin Fleischmann Memorial Project YouTube channel. Bob's very active and usually releases multiple new videos a week, showing in-depth analysis of these systems in real time. I also have a previous video, groundbreaking new findings and the story so far, that gives a fairly comprehensive and easy to grasp timeline and overview of the new findings and Bob's analysis of the thunderstorm generator and some of the other reactors. But let's go back and finish off explaining the basics of what's occurring in the thunderstorm generator. So all of what we've mentioned is occurring to cause transmutation of the exhaust gas into something more desirable in this circumstance. Usually that would be a very high energy reaction. In this case, it's a very low energy reaction. Lots of turbulence though. The cold input stream is finally vacuumed into the engine's air intake and utilized in the normal process of combustion. And in an optimal system, there is some increase in fuel efficiency, as we mentioned, due to the increased hydrogen and other combustible elements caused by the thunderstorm reactions, but also the plasmoids themselves can be utilized as a fuel source. Plasma is a fuel source. So the hot vortex in the outer pipe, on the other hand, is ejected from the outlet at the bottom of the outer sphere. So this kind of acts as the secondary exhaust in this case. And this is where the gas analyzer probe is generally placed, although it has been placed in other places on other systems as well to check that there's not something weird going on there. But to identify the composition of the exhaust gas with the retrofit attached, which then can be compared to a baseline of just a regular engine running. So we're going to show exactly how this works at the end of the video when I play the footage of the newest test performed in the US. So one last note, curiously, trials have shown that after the thunderstorm generator has been run for a certain period of time, the Vajra, the third unit of the system in which the thunderstorm is generated and the reactions occur, becomes conditioned. So the plasmoids embed themselves in the metal of the spheres and the pipes, and they continue to live there and perform work, even after the bubbler is disconnected. Pretty astounding stuff, and something which will be explored much more in future controlled trials. It's already been tested on multiple systems and confirmed. Malcolm's confirmed that this is indeed the case. We can condition one part of the system and then remove the bubbler and the UV ionizer and still get quite a dramatic decrease in carbon gases, increase in oxygen. We talk about this a little bit in the previous videos as well. And this is essentially how the thunderstorm generator works. I've tried to explain the whole process as simply as possible in layman's terms, without any seriously grievous sacrifices to accuracy, but please be aware that this is an explanation for laymen, which serves to help people understand the basic concepts of what's occurring. According to Malcolm, the thunderstorm generator is ultimately a precision-tuned instrument. This is no chemical reaction, it's a dilation of time by the arrangement of geometry. The 4:3:2 ratio spheres and other factors such as the 51.84 degree transitions used between the spheres and the pipes are essential. We speak about this a little more in my DIY build guide video, and I'm currently writing another video that goes into more detail on Malcolm Bendall's plasmoid unification model and how he applied this science and these highly harmonic numbers such as 432 and 5184 in the design of the thunderstorm generator and his other technologies. So again, keep in mind that the explanation I've provided in this video is simplified. I'm just attempting to build a bridge using words and concepts that can be more broadly understood for now. But for those interested, I'm a serious student of Malcolm Bendall, and I will be delving much deeper into aspects of his model of physics and sharing what I learn as I go. So look out for more of these videos. In the meantime, I highly recommend checking out my video, The Laws of Sanskrit Mathematics. It's not my most popular one, but I think it is one of my best. I produced this video with Malcolm's collaboration to try and provide a compiled key to being able to decipher his plasmoid unification model and understand the different ways Malcolm uses numbers in his notes. And if you're a scientist who wishes to research this on a much more technical level than I'm able to provide, I highly recommend you hold your criticism on this subject, even if you find my explanation insufficient, oversimplified, or marginally technically inaccurate, and instead approach this from another angle. There is a host of academic and peer-reviewed material building to review on this, which explains these concepts in all of their minute technical glory. They're not specifically on the thunderstorm generator system itself, but are on the same processes that are occurring in the thunderstorm generator in different systems and even naturally occurring in some cases. So I recommend reading the peer-reviewed article published recently in the journal Nature. Water can trigger nuclear reaction to produce energy and anomalous gases, authored by Dr. Bin-Juan Huang, Bob Grenier, and their colleagues working with Dr. Fang in Taiwan. Another interesting recent paper released in March to check out: anomalous heat generation that cannot be explained by known chemical reactions produced by nanostructured multi-layer metal composites and hydrogen gas, published in the Japanese Journal of Applied Physics. Another paper published in January: extraterrestrial life in space, plasmas in the thermosphere, UAP, pre-life, fourth state of matter, deals with a different aspect of structured plasma. There is a book, The New Science of Heaven, by Professor Robert Temple, which is practically a book of references about structured plasma research. It's got an enormous amount of material and covers an enormous amount of topics in there. A really great introduction to many important concepts. And I'll rail off a few more scientists to go and check out that are highly relevant. This list is far from being exhaustive. It's just a few off the top of my head. You'll need to go and watch 300 hours of Bob Greenyer if you want the exhaustive list, I think. So Ken Shoulders, Takaki Matsumoto, Hal Puthoff, Hank Urian, Anatoly Klimov, Anatoly Nikitin, Max Fomitchev-Zamiliv, Alexander Shishkin, Martin Fleischmann, Alexander Parkinov, Slobodan Stankovic, Neil Krient-Gold, Winston Bostic, Victor Schauberger. So that's enough to be going on with for now. If you're having trouble finding some of these scientists and their research, like I say, head on to the Martin Fleischmann Memorial Project YouTube channel or Bob Greenyer's Substack. Links for both in the description. Bob and MFMP have brought a lot of this research into the mainstream awareness, so it's a great place to find all of these references. And if you're more interested in the practical side of the technology, building the Thunderstorm generator, you can see my DIY build guide, which goes through the steps to build your own prototype based primarily on hardware store parts. Malcolm and his team and commercial partners have also been working on a pre-production prototype to be retrofit to small engines, which they're working towards having mass produced. Over the last 6 months, since Malcolm open sourced the designs and specs for the original Thunderstorm generator prototype, they've been working on improving and solidifying the design to get it ready for mass production. The current new design works on exactly the same principles. Nothing has changed there, but they have optimized many parts of the design, including making the pipes between the spheres far shorter and tuning this and annealing and pressure quenching the spheres and pipes. So Malcolm has submitted patents and PCTs for the new design. There are already made partners, including the Indian Navy, and it is already licensed commercially in a number of countries already. So if you're interested in inquiring about licensing, mass production, or distribution of the Thunderstorm generator on a national level, you can get in touch with Strike Foundation themselves, Malcolm Bendall's not-for-profit, which is the entity that submitted the protection patents for the current design. And if you're interested in investing in the Thunderstorm generator or any of the other commercial inquiries, you can get in touch with Alpha Prospects. And they've been behind the majority of the funding for the research and the development of the Thunderstorm generator and Malcolm's other technologies so far. And they're also the commercial licensees already in multiple countries, including the US and Thailand. So their information is displayed here on the screen. So Christopher Foster is the CEO and the primary contact in the West, and Kevin Baker is over in Thailand, and you'll find more information on their website about them. So please note that I'm not a representative for Strike or Alpha Prospects, nor am I giving investment advice. I have my own opinions and predictions about how this technology will go and how it will be rolled out, and they are obviously very positive predictions at this stage, to say the least. But I am an open source independent researcher approaching this from a learning and scientific interest perspective. And I have zero experience in mass production, industry, or investment. So I still get a number of emails with commercial and investment inquiries. And that's why I'm providing these details here. So you can reach out to Alpha Prospects if you want to inquire about that. They're very helpful and responsive, and I am unable to help you with those inquiries. Alrighty, moving on, let's play the new footage from Phil Dubois and George Howard in North Carolina, where Phil recently delivered and installed a new Thunderstorm generator and ran some quick tests. So this is actually a version of the first design with the 24-inch pipes between the spheres, but they still managed to get an absolutely phenomenal result from it, which is shown in the video. So for reference, here is the composition of the gas from the exhaust of a fairly standard size petrol Honda generator, about the same size as this one, running as usual with no Thunderstorm generator retrofit attached. So we see CO2, carbon dioxide, is at about 9.3%, CO, carbon monoxide, is at 5.48%, oxygen, O, is at 4.66%, HC, hydrocarbons, are at 199 parts per million, and NOx, nitrous oxide, is at 27 parts per million. So this is all within the standard average range of what we can expect to find coming out of the exhaust of a standard small petrol Honda generator, give or take a little. The Chinese knockoff brands of generators can often run a fair bit dirtier than this again. But anyway, keep this average baseline in mind as we watch the footage of Phil and George checking the exhaust gas analysis of the engine, running with the Thunderstorm generator installed this time. And just like in all of the previous public demonstrations and trials, we see carbon dioxide and carbon monoxide drop back down to practically nothing. And oxygen, on the other hand, significantly increases. So what we have coming out of the exhaust with the Thunderstorm generator installed essentially has the composition of air at atmospheric levels. So no further ado, here is the footage from Phil and George.
Film it. Film it. Now film it. Should go back up to 20. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right now.
That's calibrating, man. That's calibrating.
Look, zoom in. It's going that far. different.
A little bit. Might been about
Now look
2
again.
orders of magnitude.
Okay.
It's like less than 10% difference.
Hold on. Okay, so look again.
Dude, that ain't supposed to be. That ain't supposed to be, man. Woo! 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 Woo!
Don't pop the cork just yet, George.
Woo!
All right, so once again, we see the oxygen significantly increased and the carbon dioxide and carbon monoxide significantly reduced compared to a typical baseline reading from a Honda petrol generator. And this gas analyzer actually didn't show the hydrocarbons, and the nitrous oxide was only intermittently registered. It wasn't at the end of the test there. But most of the other tests have checked for these too. So for example, these were the results here, shown in the previous trial done on the stubby designs in the UK on the 1st of April. And we can see hydrocarbons and nitrous oxide registered here and compared to a baseline to get an idea. And that's all for now. I hope this video helped more people understand what the Thunderstorm generator is all about. The pre-production prototypes and the other Thunderstorm generators are starting to worm their way out to the independent testing teams, so we should see a fairly steady stream of trials and new results coming in over the next few months before Cosmic Summit. And we'll also be following up on Bob Greenier's continually astounding new findings in his scanning electron microscope analysis of the Thunderstorm generator and other fusion reactors working on similar principles like Dr. Bin-Wayne Huang's reactors. Remember that you will be able to catch us in person at Cosmic Summit in North Carolina, USA in June. Myself, Malcolm Bendall, Bob Greenier, and Phil Dubois will be there all weekend with the Thunderstorm generator. There's going to be live demos, question times, even a disco. You'll catch Malcolm, Bob, and myself on the main stage on Saturday, along with Randall Carlson, Johanna James, and a host of other absolutely incredible speakers and scientists. And I believe this weekend in June it's really going to be something special. I'm sure many of you are realizing, along with me, that the world's going through a great change right now, and we are the first adopters of something which will very likely completely change the trajectory of humanity. This isn't just about a retrofit for combustion engines, it's a far deeper and more significant rediscovery of primeval, perennial, spiritual and scientific knowledge that was known by our ancient ancestors, many of them all over the world, and it's been rediscovered many times since. Get your tickets now if you can. Use my affiliate link in the description if you want to help me out with a small commission. Remember, there are live stream passes available for the main conference and also the extra Monday classroom session, going deeper into the science and tech with Malcolm Bendall, Bob Greenier, Phil Dubois, and myself. Thanks for watching, guys. Stay tuned. I'll see you next time.